Perfect. So welcome everybody. My name is Eleanor Miclette and I'm the Vice President for Economic Developers Alberta and a Manager of Economic Development for the town of Canmore. And we're so glad that you are joining us here for Minister Meet Up. And today's topic is agriculture, forestry, and environment. First off, I want to thank AUMA for partnering with us for the Minister Meet Up. And we have Che-Wei Chung here, Director of Policy and Advocacy here to say a few words on behalf of AUMA. So I'll give the floor over to you, Che-Wei.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to here. I always forget that you guys record each session. So if my greeting wasn't good, it's going to be recorded and it's going to be shown for many years to come. So I'm going to keep my greeting very concise. So welcome to today's session. My name is Che-Wei Chung. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Policy with AUMA. And AUMA represents summer villages, towns, cities, and specialized municipalities in Alberta, where 85% of Albertans live. So we have about 257 municipalities are members of AUMA. So I'm delighted to bring greetings to today's sessions. And I also want to take this opportunity to provide a few thank yous. And the first, I want to thank the Alberta Environment Parks for being a great partner with municipalities. So after many years of advocating for extended producer responsibility, EPR packaging and paper program, we're very grateful that Environment Parks is engaging municipalities on EPR framework and in the developing of packaging and paper program in this province. So thank you for listening to municipalities and being a great partner on this policy journey. And I also want to thank the Alberta Agriculture and Forestry for providing a $1 million agriculture plastic recycling pilot program. So over 20 organizations lead the pilot as part of the Agriculture Plastic Recycling Group, APRG, and AUMA is part of it. And so the pilot has 31 collection sites. And because of the pilot, a new green bag recycling facility was created in Bashop by a private company. The company is called Poly-Egg Recycling, creating local jobs processing plastic back into feedstock pellets for remanufacturing. So when we talk about recycling in the past, we always talk about the environmental policy, but with a pilot, we have a very good example of how recycling and job creation often fit together. And we would love to see this pilot transition into a permanent program and creating more jobs in Alberta. I believe the egg plastic recycling pilot will end probably some early 2022. So AUMA's partnership with ministry doesn't end with just waste management. And one of our unique opportunities, unique partnership with the provincial government and the rural municipalities of Alberta is the Municipal Climate Change Action Center. And last year, the Action Center was recognized with an Alberta Emerald Award for their first decade of accomplishments. And Trina Innes, Executive Director of Sustainability Services at AUMA, is part of this panel. And she will share more about Action Center's programs, including the latest one, the Clean Energy Improvement Program. I just want to take a few seconds to mention a few AUMA services and events. To support Alberta's municipalities with their sustainability goals, we have recently launched our energy management services. So our new service supports community through building retrofits, reducing energy consumptions, even installing renewable energy sources like solar panels. And municipalities have access to many grants that can be applied towards these construction costs. So reaching out to us and see how we can help you. Another one I want to mention, because I realize that there are a few elected officials signing to today's session, is the Elected Official Education Program, EOEP, which is also a partnership between Government Alberta, AUMA, and Rural Municipality Alberta. It's offering a course on regional partnership and collaboration starting on May 5th. If you're interested, please go to auma.ca/events to find out more. Now, I'm happy to turn this discussion over back to you guys.
Thanks, Che-Wei. That is a lot of great stuff happening in the province. And in the Bow Valley, we in Canmore have the largest solar farm on municipal infrastructure. So there's some exciting things happening in that area for municipalities for sure. Today present with us are Deputy Minister Shannon from Alberta Agriculture and Forestry, Assistant Deputy Minister Jamie Curran with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry, Deputy Minister Bev Yee with Alberta Environment and Parks, as well as Trina, Executive Director of Sustainable Strategy. So welcome. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Deputy Minister Marchand to give us some comments about, introduce himself, brief description of programs and services, or anything else that he wishes to share at this point.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Eleanor. It's my pleasure to be here to speak on behalf of Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, the Honourable Devin Dreeshen, and happy to be joined by Jamie and of course my colleague Bev and folks from her team as well. It would be great to, of course, be able to see you in person, and one day that will happen soon, but not quite yet. And what's been, I think, a tough year. Fortunately, agriculture has been a pretty bright spot. We've had over the past year very high agricultural yields, high exports, and fundamentally high prices as well. We saw some challenges in the cattle sector early in the pandemic, but supply has evened out. We've also seen the forest industry having a very good year in 2020, despite the pandemic, which is actually certainly continuing in 2021 with, again, sort of record high prices for lumber products. And the province, we exported nearly $4 billion worth of forest products last year, which was a 14% increase from 2019. And as we look sort of beyond 2019, those two sectors we see as a really major component of Alberta's economic recovery. We have an agriculture sector strategy that supports the recovery through three key pillars: aggressive investment attraction of $1.4 billion by 2023, leading to 2,000 jobs created; growing exports of value-added agricultural products at 8.5% a year, and of primary products at 7.5% a year, and then expanding primary production through investments in irrigation and research. Regarding irrigation, irrigated land in southern Alberta, makes up less than 6% of our cultivated land in the province, but contributes about 20% of the overall agricultural GDP. So last fall, the government announced our partnership with the Canadian Infrastructure Bank and 8 irrigation districts for the $815 million investment in modernizing and expanding irrigation infrastructure. It's one of the largest one-time investments in irrigation in Alberta's history, and we expect will create over 8,000 jobs, while significantly increasing primary production by allowing farmers to irrigate more acres with the same water. And we expect funding to start to flow to those projects early this summer. As well, with the establishment of the Results-Driven Agriculture Research, or RDAR, we're approaching ag research in a whole new way for Alberta. With RDAR as an arm's length organization, farmers and ranchers will have a greater say in where our research funding goes. And so far, we've had great response from industry, with RDAR receiving hundreds of requests for proposals for a call they did late last year. And we're committing $370 million over 10 years to ag research funding to really ensure consistency in this sector. I'll just speak a little bit about the value-added processing sector, which is really, we've made investment attraction in this area a central component of our strategy. And we're looking to make that happen by, continually looking for ways to cut red tape for potential investors, providing a single window of supports, doubling our network of agriculture-focused staff in Alberta's international offices, and modernizing our Canadian Agricultural Partnership Grant Program to make applications easier and steer it towards value-added growth and exports. And we're currently targeting sectors like canola, grain and pork processing, plant proteins, greenhouses, agri-tech, and emerging industries like hemp, and certainly seeing early results. We're sort of we're past halfway to our 4-year investment target and quickly approaching $1 billion in processing investments. We're working on more than 40 active investment leads with a combined potential value of $2.7 billion in new investments, with the potential to create more than 1,700 jobs. We're hiring the staff dedicated to agricultural trade at our international offices, with new staff in Singapore, Mexico, the EU, and the US to complement the staff we already have in Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, and New Delhi. As I said, as we move forward in the agricultural sector, we rely heavily on our Canadian Agricultural Partnership, which is a 5-year, $3 billion investment by federal, provincial, territorial governments to strengthen agriculture, agri-food, and agri-based products. And in CAP, that investment is Alberta, that investment is $406 million over 5 years, expiring in 2023. And so, as I said earlier, we're working to modernize our grant programs under that, the CAP framework, to strengthen the investment and strengthen the focus on investment and growth in Alberta's ag industry, encourage innovation and technological advancement on farms and in value-added facilities, and help producers to open more markets, as well as simplifying the application process. I'll just speak quickly also to the forestry sector. As I said earlier, the prices are very good. More people are working at home, and there's some supply constraints across North America. And the people working at home are eyeing up all the things that they don't like about their houses or they want to fix about their houses. And so there's lots of renovations happening. We're building a fence this year, not really the best, not best timing. But we are doing our part to help the industry to be able to succeed, as we are generally speaking in agriculture and forestry, to succeed and of course compete while adhering to forestry best practices and making sure that, consistent with our trade obligations as well. So part of our Forest Jobs Action Plan, there's sort of 5 initiatives that are underway to increase an annual allowable cut, allocating unallocated timber near Grand Prairie and Lesser Slave Lake, trying to increase access to leftover fiber, looking at how we return burned forest to annual allowable cut calculations, ensuring companies are using the full annual allowable cut, and some improvements to our tree programs. And so we're also working with other government departments like BEVs to see how land use planning can, in the long term, support the annual allowable cuts that exist within the forestry sector. Just a final piece on forestry is in the fall legislative session, amendments to the Forestry Act and its regulations were passed. And it was really the first time since the 1970s the Act had been updated, which gave an opportunity for it to better reflect current industry realities. And amendments focused on reducing red tape and improving competitiveness by ensuring the timber due system reflects costs and market conditions, removing some unnecessary regulatory burdens, and at the same time maintaining our fundamental standards around sustainable forest management. As always, softwood lumber dispute just in the forestry sector remains always in our minds, and we will continue to defend our sector through legal action, appeals, through all the agreements and processes available to us. So, I think that gives a good overview, and, notwithstanding the pandemic and the uncertainty it's brought, it really is an exciting time in the agriculture and forestry sectors. I've been here for a few weeks now, and just the opportunity that I see every day is just amazing. And so can look forward to our continued work to ensure the industries, succeed and grow in the province, and working with all of you to make sure that really becomes a reality. So thanks very much, and I'll look forward to questions when we get to that point.
Thank you so much. And indeed, from a lumber price perspective, building your fence right now might indeed be a costly endeavor.
Yeah, my neighbor's on the one side who didn't want to do it last year, but then decided they want to do it this year.
And now they're regretting that decision, I am sure. Well, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. And as Nancy indicated, if we have questions, please put them in the chats box and we'll assign them accordingly. For now, I'm going to open the floor to Assistant Deputy Minister Jamie Curran with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry to introduce himself and to share with us some information.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll keep it short. So Eleanor, thank you. I'm Jamie Curran, Assistant Deputy Minister for Trade and Investment in Food Safety and Agriculture and Forestry. I work for Shannon, and really I'm helping to bring to life the export investment file that I think all of you will be interested in. So just in a nutshell, we work very closely with companies, supporting their investment needs, leveraging our internal programming and the wider GOA programming, along with those companies that want to export. And we know that for success, it creates a partnership and that interplay between all of you on this call to be successful. So I'm kind of here listening. I know you're going to have some questions for our deputies, but I don't have a formal presentation. So I'll just leave it at that, and just thank you. And I look forward to getting to know many of you further as we progress in our export investment needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brief and to the point. I see no questions at this time, so we'll just keep going. And please, if you have questions, put them in there, or you can wait to the end and we're happy to address them at that point. I'm now going to open the floor to Deputy Minister Bev with Alberta Environments and Parks to introduce herself and share with us today. You're on mute still.
Yes, I had to figure that one out. Somebody's got to do it at every meeting, right? Yeah. Thanks very much, Eleanor, and I'm delighted to be here. It's nice to see some familiar faces. As you said in your introduction, I am the Deputy Minister of Environment and Parks, has spent some time at Municipal Affairs as ADM, and then over at Ag and Forestry as well as Deputy Minister. So familiar with some of the folks that are on this call today. So thanks, everybody. I do want to recognize the economic developers of Alberta because, you know, for almost 50 years now, you've been in this business of bringing governments and businesses together. And I'm so glad to see that you have continued to find some ways to do that at a time when we can't really get together safely in person. I'm really honored to be here today to join all of you on behalf of Minister Nixon to talk about challenges and solutions for Alberta's economy. These conversations are really very important, and the need for economic recovery makes them even more urgent than ever. Alberta's government is committed to that recovery, and to do that in a way that builds on the partnering that we already have, and to build partnerships that would actually ensure that we have a future of growth. Our vision at the department, at Alberta Environment and Parks, is to balance the needs of our environment and natural landscapes with those of our economy. Those of you who know me have known that I often talk about working landscapes, that it is possible to have economic activity on the landscape and still maintain and protect conservation objectives as well. We want to see all sectors, sectors of all sizes, creating jobs and staying competitive while reducing emissions and minimizing environmental impacts. And we want to see resilient, healthy ecosystems supporting healthy, resilient communities. And that is all really very possible. So in that spirit, I want to spend just a few minutes to speak briefly with you about some of the things we're doing to pursue key climate initiatives, to encourage sustainable growth, to invest in resilient watersheds, and to improve our regulatory system. This balance will bring more jobs, more investment, and more certainty for anyone planning on building new projects here in Alberta. Along with increased economic development, we hope it will also make Alberta's communities more resilient. It's really hard, you know, to grow as a community when you're always constantly rebuilding, or it feels like you're constantly rebuilding after severe weather patterns, floods, and droughts. So one of the ways in order to break that cycle is really to focus on climate change issues and to lower emissions through our climate initiatives. Our Technology Innovation and Emissions Reduction Fund, or we go by the acronym TIER, is doing just that by managing industrial greenhouse gas emissions and investing in green technologies. This program encourages industrial emitters to lower their emissions over time and requires that they pay into the TIER investment fund if they cannot meet high performance standards. The fund is focusing on projects that involve industrial energy efficiency, involves projects like carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and also on methane emissions reduction. Over the past year, this government has committed to investing more than $700 million from the TIER fund and from other public funding sources to support climate initiatives. When you combine that with the contributions that industry makes, it's an investment of just under $2 billion, and that's very, very significant. You may have also already heard that funding is already supporting promising projects, which will lead to thousands of jobs for Albertans. Just last week, Minister Nixon did announce that $33 million out of the TIER fund has been put towards 17 projects in the natural solutions, bioenergy, and agri-food sectors. And we continue to work across a number of different sectors. So I do look forward to watching those projects as they come to fruition, and we see the opening up of new markets and attraction of long-term investment in Alberta. Encourage everybody to stay tuned as we continue to roll out more projects in coming days to look at things that are funded out of the TIER fund. So as we work to lower emissions here in the province, and the department is also envisioning a full economic recovery and future growth. Sometimes people think that, you know, pursuing aggressive or ambitious targets to lower emissions might cause our economy to stagnate, and that is far from being the truth. One of the key opportunities for that growth lies in our petrochemical sector. We heard mention of the ag plastics earlier in our presentation today. When it comes to plastics, we know that Alberta has a waste problem. There's no denying, and we're not alone. Every other jurisdiction also has that issue as well. But we also know that we need plastics in our modern economy. So to solve this problem, we are collaborating with the Plastics Alliance of Alberta to keep plastics in the economy, but out of the environment. By 2030, our goal is to have a circular plastics economy that moves us from production to diversion to recycling and then back again. And in order to do that, we're using an approach called extended producer responsibility. And as many of you know, EPR, or extended producer responsibility, shifts the financial and operational responsibilities for waste management to the producers who are best positioned to manage them. So we are very committed to implementing this strategy in a way that benefits local governments, taxpayers, and all Albertans. It is a big change from the kind of programs that we've had here in Alberta, so we want to make sure we were hearing from everyone involved. So in March, we launched an engagement process with job creators, local communities, and concerned Albertans to discuss the best way to design this Made in Alberta strategy. That engagement wraps up on April 30th, and I'm very eager to see what we learn from that. I'm sure that people have put forward some great ideas. Our hope is that extended producer responsibility will help tackle our waste problem while growing our economy at the same time and generating high value jobs at a time when they are so urgently needed. Of course, all of this depends on keeping our natural ecosystems healthy. New development is dependent on it. And so we're very aware of that challenge. So I'm also pleased to share some information about our watershed resiliency and restoration program. It's an existing program that we're continuing to invest in. And as you may have seen in budget 2021, it includes an additional $10.5 million invested over 3 years to protect water quality and to help communities like all of yours adapt to severe weather patterns. We're partnering with Indigenous communities, non-government organizations, municipalities, and other groups to advance flood resiliency and to enhance people's knowledge of how to keep their local watersheds healthy. Just in this last year, Alberta delivered more new and updated flood mapping to Albertans than we have over the last 30 years combined. And you might say, flood maps? You know, oh, okay, so what of that, Bev? But flood mapping provides us valuable information to allow for planning in municipalities, and part of developing resiliency means having that updated information. I want to assure you that we will continue to make flood mapping a top priority for the department and in years to come, so that all of our communities are going to be informed by updated flood maps. So speaking of top priorities, another key area of focus for the department is transforming our regulatory system. Over the years, there's no doubt that we have heard lots of feedback on our regulatory system. We often hear that it's too complicated, too difficult to navigate. So we've heard that, and we're in the process now of transforming our regulatory system so that it is simpler, more modern, and capable of moving at the speed of business. In the past, we've also heard that our system has been too risk averse and slow moving, and that it's time for a change. So we are moving towards having a regulatory system that is more integrated, is really focused on outcomes, and does take a risk-based approach where we're prepared to tolerate some level of risk. The other thing that we're doing is that we are automating the system so that people can go online to do their applications. And for routine low-risk applications, those things will move through the system relatively quickly. We want exciting projects and new investment here in Alberta, and we do. We need regulations that offer a high standard of service along with a high standard of protection. And that is our goal, that is our objective. I know we can protect our environment without making life needlessly difficult for Albertans who want to see increased economic opportunities in their communities. And I'm confident we can get there very soon. So there's a lot to do, but there's also a lot to celebrate as we begin this process of economic recovery. You have all met this last year's challenges with incredible creativity, and I'm certain that you will bring that same creativity to the opportunities that are on the horizon. Our department is prepared and eager to work with you as we move from recovery to growth. And soon, I hope that we'll be able to have these kinds of conversations in person. But for now, thank you for having me join you this way, and I look forward to having a discussion and answering any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister Yee. And I have to say that I did not expect you to be talking about petrochemicals and plastic circular economy, but what a great program, and happy to see more of that, because indeed we have a waste problem on the globe. And I think that that is a great way to start mitigating some of those issues specifically in that realm. So thank you for sharing that. That's my takeaway from your presentation today. I did see some questions come in. I am going to hold them to the end, and we'll invite Trina Innes, Executive Director of Sustainability Strategies with AUMA, to share with us, to introduce yourself first and foremost and share with us today. She does have a presentation as well.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all today. Is this coming through okay, Eleanor?
Perfect, thank you.
All right then. So let's just go back here. So very happy to join you today. As economic developers, I know that you're all looking for opportunities to contribute to economic growth and sustainability in your communities. And you're also concerned about the opportunities to recover from the oil price decline and the pandemic. And we have a number of opportunities to help you in this recovery journey. So the AUMA and the Alberta Municipal Services Corporation have two programs to offer. The Municipal Climate Change Action Center was established in 2009. It's a partnership led by the AUMA in collaboration with the rural municipalities of Alberta and the government of Alberta, with Environment and Parks being the primary funder of most of our programs. We provide technical assistance, funding, and education to municipalities, schools, and community organizations to help them lower energy costs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and improve climate resilience. And through the AMSC, we have the Clean Energy Improvement Program, which provides financing to residential and commercial property owners to help them install energy efficiency and renewable energy upgrades on their properties. Some of you have heard about the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that have happened with the restriction in economic activity associated with the pandemic. Once we move towards more normal things, emissions will start climbing again. And as the costs of carbon generating activities increase, the opportunities to reduce emissions through clean energy will be increasingly valuable. And lasting solutions to climate change will be connected to finding ways to achieve emissions reductions while the economy is growing. And the programs we have fit into this space. The programs create jobs in construction and energy efficiency retrofits, energy storage, clean technology. It puts people to work, engineers, window and insulation installers, auditors and plumbers. And anywhere where we can reduce energy use, we will free up dollars that can be spent on other economic development activities. Upgrading municipal buildings, private properties will enhance property values, and that will help with tax revenue for municipalities as well. So I wanted to share a short video with you that gives some information about the experience of one of the organizations that has worked with us.
I'm Stacey Hupke, Mayor of Carmen-Gay. I've been away from the village for 30 years and came back about 5 years ago. So I'm happy to see lots of great changes going on in the village. As far as sustainable living and farming goes, I have an admiration of the farmers and the methods that they've created and the investment that they make in their equipment to get the yield they get now compared to what they used to when I was growing up here.
The impetus was really to see how we could get more sustainable infrastructure. So we looked at what the cost was to set up a solar system and how the life cycle of it over 25 years would do. And it ended up being a very good option. We worked with the Action Center and that grant really put us over the top as far as this being a really viable choice for us. In the end, with the grants, we were able to save just over $13,000 a year for our residents. As we add more facilities or municipally owned buildings and infrastructure onto the system, those will come at a reduced cost for us. And that makes us sustainable in the long run.
If you can find a way to reduce costs, but also generate revenue and generate interest in your community, and I think sustainable living is one sort of aspect that people are interested in going forward in the future. I'm hoping that Carmen-Gay will be a center for people that are green energy thinking and self-sustaining living, and hope that people will view the solar project that the Action Center has helped us put in place, and they look at that as a step to sustainable living, and that would be wonderful.
So we have many stories like the story of Carmen-Gay that we share through our project showcase. There's hundreds of examples of of projects from solar PV to energy efficiency solutions, energy managers and whatnot. Organizations, municipalities across the province, some of them will actually take advantage of multiple programs, sometimes on the same facility. Genesis Place in Airdrie is home to Canada's largest municipal rooftop solar array, a solar carport, lighting upgrades throughout their recreational facility, and an electric ice resurfacer. So lots of neat opportunities there. Another one I wanted to draw your attention to is the Renew Well initiative. This is a project that was one of our winners of the Municipal Community Generation Challenge. They have a really big idea to take abandoned oil wells and turn them into solar farms. So if this is an issue in your community, this is an innovative project worth watching. Oil companies save on their reclamation costs by retaining some of the basic infrastructure of those oil wells after some initial cleanup. And then companies can enter into new leases with landowners and reuse the infrastructure that was left behind to build solar projects on the same site. And given the work of the Rural Municipalities Association of Alberta in finding $245 million in unpaid property taxes owed by oil and gas companies, this creates an opportunity to ease this problem by putting in new sites. They would pay taxes to municipalities and also support landowners in the local area. It's a very innovative opportunity. So looking forward to 2021, we have some new offerings. AUMA has a fully managed energy management service that Che-Wei mentioned at the opening today. We will be launching a climate adaptation program to provide funding to help municipalities assess climate risks and adaptation planning. We will soon launch a charging program for electric vehicles, funding a minimum of 50% of the cost of putting charging stations in. We're waiting to hear about another grant that may increase the amount that is covered under this program. And then the Clean Energy Improvement Program, which I mentioned earlier, which will allow people to finance energy improvements and repay that through a separate charge on their property's tax bill. So lots of new programs to come. And I encourage you to visit our varying websites to learn more or ask questions later in today's presentation.
Well, thanks, Trina. That was very informative. I love the oil to solar initiative. That is indeed very innovative, and having been an economic developer in Northern Alberta for 8 years prior to coming south, there are indeed lots of abandoned oil wells that need some new life poured into them. So thank you for sharing that today. We've had various questions come in, so I'll just go through them as they follow or come in. So this one is for Jamie from Trevor. And first of all, thank you for being here. And any thoughts on how Alberta can shift some of the recent canola crush capital investment back from Saskatchewan? For example, 350 million by Cargill, same by Viterra. Thoughts on what drew those investments there, and would be curious on your insights.
Okay, thank you for the question. I thought I was going to get off easy today with the deputies on the line. So, okay, so first of all, we're well aware of the recent announcements in Saskatchewan. The canola sector is part of our strategy, right, in terms of canola crushing and canola for our subsector strategy, and we want to be as competitive as possible as a jurisdiction. I don't want to get into the specifics of the announcements or the companies that were represented, but I do want to flag that Cargill has a strong presence in the province of Alberta, as well as Viterra in different capacities. Cargill has canola crushing in Camrose, and Viterra has a large presence throughout the province. So as a multinational, there's many considerations that you think about as you make those investment decisions. But how we move forward, certainly, I think we're going to take a very targeted approach, working with other potential investors, and we're going to, of course, work with our investment agency to reach out to multinationals that might not certainly be present in the province of Alberta already. So we'll work with those that are prepared to expand, and we're aware of those. And then, of course, others that potentially you might want to have some sort of foreign direct investment. But we still need to continue to further build out that network. And we have a lot of work to do in terms of continuing to further promote and market our jurisdiction internationally. And of course, work with those companies that we treasure and value so much currently in the province. And so, like I said, those companies already have invested in Alberta. I would have loved to have seen them continue to make other investments, but they, of course, have other drivers that I'm probably not fully aware of. So I hope that helps answer some of the question.
Thank you for that. The next one is also addressed to you. Can you provide some insights into how Alberta Agriculture is working together with Invest Alberta and the other regional economic development agencies and municipalities? What is the key consistent message we need or are sharing with investors?
Okay, lots of that. So hopefully I can cover it all. So working with the investment agency, so the department has an MOU with the investment agency. We, as Deputy Marchand indicated, I think in his opening remarks, we have, of course, an international network with agricultural officers. Currently, I don't know if he said this, but Japan, Korea, India, and Beijing, and we're going to expand that into US, Europe, Singapore, and Mexico. So with that, though, we expect those officers to not only support investment objectives, but also our trade objectives for those companies that are going into the market supporting agricultural expansion work or growth work that we hope to have. In terms of that macroeconomic messages, I think you're all well aware of those in terms of our competitive tax environment, our red tape reduction. We talked a little bit about those. And then specific to the department, we are unique in terms of the highly integrated nature of our policy and programs and the services we provide. Deputy Minister Marchand talked about RDAR, so our results-driven agricultural research, which is supported through our Canadian Agriculture Partnership funding, along with some funding from the department. Our work with AFSC as a lending agency. And then, of course, FPDC, our Food Product Development Center, and our Bioindustrial Center, along with the incentives and tools that are our Canadian Agriculture Partnership programming can provide through our value-added programming. So we have those tools available to us to work with our not only our local businesses to expand and grow, but also those investors that want to take a chance in Alberta and invest in the province. So I hope that helps answer some of that question. Yeah, so I'll quit talking. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if Deputy Minister Marchand has anything to add to that.
Maybe just the thing I'd add, and Jamie gave a really comprehensive overview, is I think we are, I think we're regularly, the investment team is regularly connecting with their local, like their regional community counterparts. As investment cases come forward and there's interest in certain communities or the types of opportunities that are available to them. So they're regularly doing that, which I hope doesn't come as news to, I hope some people on the call think like, yes, that sounds right, that does happen. I do think one of the things we've been talking about is about developing, making sure we have good, strong, consistent outward-facing messages that we are able to share with folks on this call, so that everyone is really able to work together in a sort of Team Alberta kind of way to advance our objectives to support the economic recovery.
Thank you for that. The next question is for everybody, so feel free to answer as you see fit. Let's see, for everyone from the GOA here today to provide input into the government's vision for our economy. So thank you for sharing that. How is the government addressing the concerns voiced by various industries, municipalities, and the Alberta Chamber of Commerce on the proposed increase in tariffs by the Alberta Electric System Operator? These types of increases can and will have a negative impact on investment to our province, which has a domino negative effect on municipalities. Thank you, Marianne, for that question.
Marianne, I'm going to take a stab at this, but maybe from the perspective of more broadly a look at costs. I know that not only ourselves, but right across the GOA, we're very sensitive to the fact that during sort of the economically challenging times, making some significant efforts to try to reduce red tape, which ultimately means reducing costs for industry is really important. So, and I know just in the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of conversations with different industry sectors where, you know, they are coming with some concerns about maybe one particular issue that is resulting in increased costs. And I guess what I've tried to talk to them about is, let's look at the entire portfolio though. There are going to be areas where there are going to be increased costs that are unavoidable. But when we can avoid some costs where we can, we should do that. And so we've looked at that through our red tape initiatives. We are looking at that through, you know, streamlining some of our regulatory processes and things like that. So I might look at it that way, to look at this, the overall sum in total. I think that certainly with a couple of industry sectors that I was talking to these last couple of weeks, that did resonate. It doesn't take away from the sting of an individual cost increase on a particular issue. But when we look holistically across the board at all the efforts that are being made, that, you know, and you do the math, it works out in favor, or works out favorably in terms of reduction in costs.
Anybody else that wants to take a stab at that?
I mean, the only thing I would maybe just add to that is, you know, given the for the forestry industry perspective, I mean, we're certainly supporting the industry and making sure that they're able to connect with the electric systems operators, so they can make sure that their particular circumstances are well understood as that decision-making process unfolds. So, you know, we're very aware of what the underlying issue is, and are paying attention to how it's moving through the decision-making process.
Thanks for that. And Marianne notes that that could, for some, be up to 10+%. So the impact could be significant indeed. I'm going to leave it open for a few more minutes. If there's any other questions, please type those into the chat and we'll be happy to address those things. Deputy Minister, you mentioned the co-working or the working landscapes, and how do you see that type of work increasing across the province as we see caribou habitats coming on board and adding of those types of restrictions? How do we make that balance of protecting our environment and the landscape, but allowing for that indeed working landscape, as you mentioned before?
Yeah, and I think, and that's always a great question, because the devil is in the detail of how you work that out, right? Whether it's caribou, or it could be water related issues in some places. It could be another species. It could be sensitive ecosystems. We're going to encounter it wherever across the province. And I think, you know, some of the tools that we've developed relative to regional planning. So we've got environmental, what we call environmental management frameworks. And those frameworks allow us to set some limits that are going to account for not only the environmental needs, but the economic needs. So you're setting them at a place where it's protective of the environment and where necessary protective of human health, but also at a level that economically kind of makes sense, right? So it's an approach to how we do everything. We're seeing it in spades, of course, with caribou conservation, and that one even complicated more by the interest shown by the federal government, who might be a little bit more, if not a lot more, aggressive on some of the objectives than we might be here in the province. But our government and Minister Nixon has said that we need to be able to incorporate socioeconomic analysis to all the environmental decisions, the big environmental decisions that we make. So that is something that they put in their platform. It is something that we're doing on all of our decision making, finding the ways of how we incorporate that socioeconomic analysis and use that to inform, you know, where we might go in a decision. But I'll be truthful, that's not easy work, and it's not easy for those who would be, you know, on, you know, the angles that might be have objectives more on the environment, and having that conversation with all the stakeholders at the table to understand what those trade-offs are, because it is about a trade-off discussion. And so I think it's just the nature of how we conduct our work that needs to be done in that way across the board.
Thank you so much. And from a CAMWOR perspective, we have that conversation very oftenly. What are the trade-offs from one around the other? I didn't see any more questions come in other than thank yous for your presence here today, for sharing so freely, and for being able to answer even the tough questions, because this is economic developers. There are no off-limit conversations, so no getting off easy. I do want to make everybody aware that the next meetup will be on June 22nd. The topic is infrastructure, transportation, and housing. Is not a topic for the ages right now. Registration is open online, and we hope to all see you there. And if you haven't already, the Economic Developers Alberta Experience 2021 conference is May 19th and 20th. We hope that you register and join us there. There's a great lineup with some innovative topics and some great panels. So we hope to see you there as well. Thank you everybody for joining us here today. And we hope you enjoy some of the nicer weather of our province today.